The committee of the whole is back in order. Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to the panel. So, the AG had some valid concerns in several things. One was the whether the government properly followed the condemnation process when it comes to GURA. And if I could just read to the public what the court case stated. And a couple of instances, if I can provide some excerpts to the court case itself. It says, quote, when a sovereign exercises eminent domain itself, it has inherent, necessary, and sweeping broad powers. But when a legislature delegates eminent domain powers to a government agency, the agency's powers to take private property are not as generous. For delegated eminent domain authority, the taking must be consistent with the purposes of the legislation and strictly construed in favor of the property owner against the agency. And so in the conclusion of the ruling, it states, the legislature did not delegate broad powers to GURA to condemn property at its discretion. Rather, its exercise of eminent domain is limited to condemning land for projects involving housing and facilities adjunct to housing projects. Because it did not occur here, the court grants the motion for summary judgment in favor of the condemnees. And so what the other point that the AG brought out was the fact that the possibility of having to repay ARP funds if it did not follow the guidelines. And so that's what my next line of questioning is in regards to capital expenditures. And so in the guidance provided about capital expenditures, it states that capital expenditures, so the final rule clarifies that recipients must use funds for programs, services, and capital expenditures that respond to the public health and negative economic impacts of the pandemic. So any use of funds in this category for capital expenditure must comply with the capital expenditure requirements, in addition to other standards for uses of funds. And so if you go further down, it talks about if the project has a total capital expenditure of $10 million or more, a written justification is required and recipients must submit as part of regular reporting to Treasury. And so in it, the written justification should also include description of harm or need to be addressed. Recipients should provide a description of the specific harm or need to be addressed and why the harm was exacerbated or caused by the public health emergency. Recipients may provide quantitative information on the extent and the type of harm, and such as the number of individuals or entities affected. It also states that explanation of why a capital expenditure is appropriate. For example, recipients should include an explanation of why existing equipment and facilities or policy changes or additional funding to pertinent programs or services would be inadequate. And then it goes on to say, comparison of proposed capital project against at least 2 alternative capital expenditures and demonstration of why the proposed capital expenditure is superior. Recipients should consider the effectiveness of the capital expenditure in addressing the harm identified and expected total cost against at least 2 alternative capital expenditures. And so my question is to the panel if they can provide any documentation that satisfies these particular requirements for this expenditure of ARP funds.
Since the expenditure was over $10 million, we did provide the justification that you're referring to there to the Treasury, like when this was first conceived, like 3 years ago.
Okay, and so that's what I'm asking. I would like to see those documents. Because if we're here for this bill, we're being asked to set aside or circumvent procurement against our, I guess the experiences that we've had when we had to circumvent procurement, we've come across problems, right? We could probably name instances when that happened. And so what I need to know is I just want to make sure we're doing our due diligence in consideration of this bill. I'm just plainly asking, are we doing our due diligence, and if I could see those documents?
Well, it is a document, it's just one submission. But I'm not sure it's really relevant to the question, but I will certainly look it out and provide it. And it does, where you started off, Senator, with the issue of Agura, right? It predated that because it had to predate that, so certainly doesn't address the activities of Agura that you referred to when you read out the court judgment.
Yeah, I think my goal is to get at the evidence, get at the hard evidence, because I think things have become too personal at this point. And if we are really truly here to avoid the loss of $104 million, and we want to make sure we're doing our due diligence, right? And so it may turn out that neither side is going to get the hospital built where it wants to, but perhaps we can use it for these things that are laid out in the guidance, because the needs are great here on Guam. There are so many categories within this guidance and how this money can be spent. And maybe we just have to put aside our polarized views about where this hospital is going to be built and look at the best interests of the community. And that's why I'm asking this question. I need to know, were these satisfied? And in order to move forward period, I think, as an island. And could we have access to that document that you submitted?
It is a document, right? But could I just remind the Senator that, not from me, but I think from the Governor's legal counsel, there was a letter like 3 or 4 months ago that noted that the requirements for the revenue loss part of ARP are at the Governor's discretion. That's in the rules from the very beginning. So I understand what you're saying, but also please recognize that the Governor has we don't have to do some reporting that's needed because it's the funding is under the Governor's discretion from a revenue loss.
So I guess that raises the question, are we abiding by the regulations?
Senator, may I remind everybody listening, especially the public, that when the interim final rule for the use of these funds came out, constructions of hospitals was not in there. We lobbied for that. So the interim final rules started out with maybe 40 different subject matters, and God knows where it ended up, maybe closer to 100 as things evolved. And one of the things that I would like to remind everybody is that the Governor got a request to be available for a phone call from Treasury. Mr. Byrne and I were invited to her office, and she was informed that her and other governors who sought to have hospitals included, because we're talking about COVID, addressing COVID, and the shortfalls that all of us knew existed at GMH throughout COVID. So they called her to tell her that we're going to amend the final rule to include the construction of hospitals. So is there a voluminous document trail that shows, this progression? No, there's not. There was a a lobbying effort on the part of the governor that was heard and granted by the Treasury. So if you look at the first iteration of the final rule, interim final rule, you'll see that there wasn't a specific mention of eligible, of hospitals in the eligible capital improvement area. And then there was. So are we ensuring that we're doing this correctly and that the construction of a hospital, and of course the related infrastructure that is going to be serving hopefully the hospital, but certainly the immediate area, is kind of why we're here. Because as you just said, maybe it's going to be, you know, an endeavor that doesn't result for whatever reason, because we're polarized, right? And I can grant that as being, you know, having some merit. But I think, as Senator Parkinson opened this morning, we're looking at being able to try to spend money we otherwise really firmly believe we would not be able to transfer to any other use. And that's the thing we've been saying, and we keep getting asked, well, how come you can't? Well, because we went into an obligation so that after December 31st, 2024, the use of those funds was specified via an interagency agreement for GWA and GPA to bring infrastructure to the site. That's why we're here today.
And the simple answer to your question is yes.
So you're using which guidance to support?
We have to use the whole body of guidance, which is the interim final rule, the final rule, and most recently, the Treasury issued a whole lot of frequently asked questions with obviously appropriate responses, which tried to address questions that they had received from states, governments, and tribal governments.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. I need to see that docket, so to speak. If you're saying, you're telling me that you're abiding by the rules, but I need to see it for myself, that, you know, step A, step B, step C, you know, you check all the boxes, you know, dot all the I's. For us to, you know, really be comfortable with this huge ask, you're asking the legislature to agree to something. And so what I'm asking you is, can you provide the documentation so I could be comfortable in making that decision? And so far, all I have is what you're saying today, but to me that is not sufficient.
Well, that's why we're here, so that we can respond to your question.
Yeah, so I would like that docket, so to speak, for us to make this decision. Okay, the other thing that was mentioned earlier was, so basically the bill circumvents or seeks to circumvent the AG's oversight of any contract over $500,000, which this definitely applies. And so I guess there's been some, I guess, confusion earlier this morning where I guess it had to do with contracts. And so in the governor's letter, she states that GPA and GWA have initiated procurement efforts to install critical power, water, and wastewater infrastructure in Manilao. So to what extent how far has the procurement efforts gone? And has a contract ever been provided to the AG for him to review?
No, Senator. That's not how it works. My understanding is that the bid was provided to the AG, who stated publicly that he would not only would not approve it, but he would not review it. So the simple thing is the bid package is sitting in front of the AG for review. So no final contract has been provided because it hasn't gone out to bid. There's been no advertisement for bidders or anyone else to bid on.
Okay, so the solicitation package.
Solicitation package
there.
has not been released because both Power and Water have been waiting for the AG's, at least the phase 1 or phase 2 approval in order to go out to bid.
So have you looked at that yourself?
I have not.
So how does that work? Because if this bill is basically saying that the Procurement Council has to review it before, let's see, what does the bill say here? So prior to execution of contracts identified, and the sections are wrong here, sections 5 and 6, the agency shall obtain approval of contracts. So what do you see as your role, Attorney Botha, in this, should this bill pass?
So simply, Senator, should the bill be passed, I would act as the designated 5150 review attorney to review all of the procurement, both what's been put forth, and then once it comes back and they have bidders and then they are seeking to award a bidder as well as the final contract before the contract is signed.
Okay.
I believe that is, at least for the one we were provided today, that is the section for Procurement Council review that says, you know, the agencies shall obtain approval of the contracts from the Procurement Council for the General Services Agency as to legality and form, and that is very similar to the language contained in 5150 for the review that is carried out.
So it says contracts, not solicitation. So what's the difference there?
Well, the solicitation would be the entire process. Generally, there's 4 phases of review that, whether it's the AG or a designated attorney does. You know, before it goes out, they look to make sure that there's sort of a standard contract generally attached to the bidder or the RFP, and then and that everything's in order. Then it's released for the publication. Then it comes back, and during the process there may be questions and answers from the different vendors. Certainly the designated attorney would assist with those. And then finally there's bids come in, the agency would evaluate the bids, and then would, the final contract would be done, and then barring no protest, then the final contract would be reviewed by the council.
Yeah, it's problematic already because the procurement seems to have started already without your involvement or with the AG's involvement. So, I mean, to me, there's this an unknown territory. First, if you are going to take the place, if that's what you think this bill is going to do, where you're going to substitute the role of the AG, you already missed out on the procurement record prior to this.
No, I don't think so. My understanding is they've submitted phase 1 to the AG, which is basically, we intend to go out, there's determinations in there, we intend to go out for procurement, and nothing else has happened since then. So I don't see anything that would prevent me from looking at the contracts from Power and Water, as I've done in the past, and then it'll move forward.
Okay. So in regards to, so I did find something here. It says the Treasury's clarifying that after December 31st, 2024, recipients are permitted to replace a contract or subaward entered into prior to December 31st, 2024 if. So there's 3 subsections. If I could just say one of them that could apply. The recipient and contractor or subrecipient mutually agree to terminate the contract or subaward for convenience. So are you familiar with this, Director?
Yes.
Okay.
Senator, you can finish this question and whatever line it has, and then your time is up.
Okay, yes, thank you. So yeah, it was stated that it seemed like there was no way to change a project, but here there is, to me, it reads as if there is this wiggle room, so to speak.
I was careful in my words to say there were limited, very limited opportunities to use the funds in a different way, and I see no way in which any way of these limitations would apply to changing the project completely.
Does that answer your question, Senator? Yeah.
Thank you. So it appears that there's an MOA with GWH EPA, and that's another document that I would like to see, if you can make that available. So the thing is that GWA is under consent decree, and it could increase rates. Actually, it will increase rates. And so that if we're talking about if this money can be used towards sewer and water to help reduce rates, because we know we all are, if there's an opportunity to use this in a way that helps our community, and it's within the rules, that's something that that maybe I would like to ask. Thank you.
Yeah, I probably can maybe make an inquiry, but yeah, I think many on the floor today want to go down that road, particularly with the discussion from Mr. Byrne on being careful with his words, but stating some things are close. Thank you, Senator. Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the panel for making yourself available for questions. So I just kind of want to walk through the basics of all of this. None of this money, from what I can understand in the discussion, can be moved because it is already obligated by a previous deadline. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. And there's a lot about talk about the things that we can't do with the money. What are some of the things we can do?
Well, may I just start from the top of the paragraph that Senator Perez was talking or quoting from. Amendment and replacements of contracts and subawards. Says, recipients have asked to what extent they may, after December 31st, 2024, amend or replace contracts and subawards entered into prior to that date. In general, recipients may not re-obligate funds or obligate additional funds after the obligation deadline, because to do so would violate the statutory deadline by which costs must be incurred. For example, if a contractor requests an unexpected change order due to a cost increase that requires a contract amendment after December 31st, 24, the recipient would not be permitted to obligate additional SFRF funds, which is ARPA funds, to the project, because the December 31st, 2024 obligation deadline would have passed and the recipient would be required to return to Treasury any funds that had not been obligated by that date.
I see. So we cannot move it to a new project, but it can be moved to a project that's already existing?
No.
No, it just can't be.
In the very limited one, it's and the whole thing, unfortunately, has to follow a previous paragraph. But a contract will be considered made in good faith for the purposes of Clause 3 above if the parties followed standard procurement or subaward practices, and the contract was not entered into for the purpose of evading the obligation deadline.
Okay. And this contract or this obligation was made with an interagency agreement,
Yes.
and that was one of the eligible ways to obligate funds without having a contract ready to go.
Yes, and the Treasury issued a release on that, and we followed that release.
Because I think a great amount of the confusion in the community is around this idea of, why can't we just shift a couple of columns and move it over to another project? But what was the date? December of 2024 was our last chance to obligate these to different projects. Is that correct?
Yes, and the interagency agreement, as I say, was the approved Treasury way of making sure that funds could be so obligated.
So, for my people of Guam that are watching at home, there was a time to debate where these funds go. That date was December of 2024, because by then we must obligate those, not necessarily spend them, but obligate them to comply with the ARP requirements and not have that money get sent back. But now that they are obligated, we have until December of 2026, the end of the year, to spend that money. Am I characterizing that correctly?
Very accurately, sir, and if I may add, in order to spend the money, we need the solicitation to pass the 5150 review, just the solicitation. It hasn't even gone out to bid, let alone discussion, negotiation, and contracting, and then somebody boots on the ground, accomplishing what it is that is supposed to be done contractually, and then receiving the payment, because we can't even pay them after December 31st, 2026. Like I said, it has to be spent. So the time, we've been very clear about the timelines for quite a number of months. And
we can't just roll up on December 30th and drop a $104 million check and say it's all spent, can we?
No, because the work has to be done, in order for it to be spent by contractual obligations and procurement law. We need to be able to have a vehicle, milestones. We have to be able to make sure that the contractor did what they were supposed to do and everybody's happy with the work before we make payment. A lot of stuff is very time consuming.
So we have a little more than a year to not only do these projects, but to do all the bureaucratic work that comes before we ever even see boots on the ground.
Yes, sir.
And these ARP funds, I guess I'm trying to figure out what kind of options we have besides resolve this problem or lose the money, because it's seeming like that's kind of where we're at. Is there anything else we can do with the money besides what we are doing now?
It's been obligated to this project. I can understand Treasury's position. I mean, you can imagine with the world of governments that they deal with, it would be chaotic were they not to have that rule, because they wouldn't really know how the money was going to be spent. So they interpreted the law and that's why we have all these words that they sent us that made it quite clear that we had to obligate money to specific projects, and that's what we did.
And another reminder that this administration is very good about taking money back and not paying food stamps on time and any number of things. So to think that we'd get some leniency from this administration, I don't think that's the case, sir.
No, I certainly don't believe that we would receive any leniency in terms of extending or repurposing. In fact, I think any attention we bring to this to the federal government is just, especially political eyes on it, is just an opportunity for that money to get snatched back by a federal government that is looking to cut back wherever it can. And so I really am, I know the answer to these questions, but I'm really asking them for the people of Guam, for them to understand that the time for discussion on this funding has come and passed. From December of 2024, when the obligation date came and went, our sole goal, our only goal, is to make sure that money gets spent. There is no repurposing this. There is no putting it to another project. It has been obligated for this project, and it is now just a question before this body. Do we want to spend $104 million in ARP money in Manilao, or do we not? That's the question. And so I, once again, ask my colleagues to ask for whatever documentation you're going to ask for, demand to talk to whoever you're going to demand to talk to. Call them if you can and answer these questions for yourself. Because ultimately it comes down to a yes, $104 million, or no, $0. This is a very, very complicated issue. But when it comes to the end, it is going to come to a yes or no vote. And we have 104 million reasons to say yes. Let me just ask one more time in case it's changed. Is there anything else we could do with this money? Can we reprogram it to the hospital? Can we move it to Simon Sanchez? Can we rebuild the Hagatnya pool with it? Can we do anything else with it other than infrastructure in Manilao?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. And so I don't know how many other ways I can ask the question, but I hope the people of Guam understand what is happening before us. This is a slow-moving disaster. The due date is December of 2026. But am I not correct that every day that we delay, we hemorrhage the ability to spend that money? Day by day, we are losing money. I don't know how much money we are unable to spend based on the time we have left. But I would imagine it gets less and less every day that this goes on. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Are we already at the point where we are hemorrhaging money? Are we at the point where we're already in danger of having to give some back?
The utilities would have loved to have this dilemma settled months ago so that they could have proceeded, as Mr. Botha mentioned, with the solicitation review, approval, actual bid packages going out, proposals sent in, reviewed, contract awarded. We haven't been able to do any of that. So yes, we're really up against the wall to be able to do what we wanted to do when we put this stuff together late last year.
And honestly, it's just so disappointing to see that all of this work is literally being held up by one person for whatever reason is trying to make his political bones on this issue. And it's not right. It's not right what the Attorney General is doing. And I agree with my colleagues. What the governor is asking for is an extraordinary measure. But extraordinary times come from extraordinary measures, and we are seeing unprecedented behavior coming out of the Attorney General's office. Abuses of power like hiring family and questionable ethics of potentially covering up meth in his office. I do not trust the conduct of the Attorney General. I have seen enough in terms of his obstruction of the executive branch's duty to execute their mandate and their mission to spend this infrastructure and to do what the executive branch does. That office was never, ever intended to be a unilateral veto of the entire executive branch. And now this problem is coming to a head. $104 million. I'm sure that this won't be the end of clashes between governors and attorney generals. As long as we continue this inefficient system, and I don't know what we got to do. I don't know what needs to be said to my colleagues, but ask the questions that will get you to a yes. Ask the questions that will get you to an affirmative position. The legislature wanted a say on where this money goes. Okay, now we have a say. Yes, it goes to Mangilao. No, it goes back to the federal government. Let's have our say. So I ask my colleagues to ask the questions you need to get to be a yes, to feel good about what you're doing, because from where I see, it's $104 million or nothing. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Senator Parkinson. Senator Montanani, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to follow up on a question that the former speaker asked regarding the potential of being able to redirect this money. And Mr. Byrne, you responded, not at this time. What did you mean by that?
I meant that the choice of where to spend the money had to be made before it was obligated.
Who makes the obligation? Who determines what the money is going to be obligated toward?
Who determines when?
What the money is going to be obligated toward? Is it the governor?
The governor, yes, she has purview over these funds.
And when did she determine she was going to obligate the $104 million for infrastructure in Mangilao? Because the Guam Memorial Hospital, toward the end of the year, when they were planning to use at least $10 million for their CIP projects, they had issued RFPs and in some instances had contracts that were signed. And so at the very last minute, that money was pulled and it was reallocated to GITA for the new hospital fund. So when did you guys know that you were going to take this 104, or however, or whenever you decided to move this money to GITA? How was that determined and obligated?
When we received the original ARPA funds, which was like 596 million, there were a number of projects identified. From the very beginning, the governor had determined that we were going to use a portion of that funds for a new hospital. At that time, I don't think that was when I think they were hoping to build the hospital at Eagles Field on land that was going to be cheaply leased by the federal government. Various other projects came along and basically reduced the amount of money that was available for this portion of the hospital, including payments to GMH and other causes, no doubt equally urgent, equally demanding, equally needed, until the sum of money basically got down to just over 100 million, which was determined to be enough for the infrastructure part of a hospital that's going to cost $800 million to $1 billion.
Senator Matanani, we have a requirement to provide to the body an ARP report. We send it to the Speaker the 5th of every month. You can go back a couple years and you can see the listing of where the funds were allocated. You'll see new hospital, over 200 million. And then, as Mr. Burns said, as other priorities came up, including assisting the hospital, and if you look at the report, there was a significant amount of money that came from ARP to assist the hospital overall. And you can see the history and how that initial allocation dwindled to where it is. So there has been, since day one, the intent to build a new hospital. And then, so it wasn't something that was done at the 11th hour by any means. And with the additional reporting requirements that the body has imposed on BBMR, you know, if you open that report and you look at the attachments, it's this long every month, because you ask for the vendor number, all transactions on the account per, you know, it's voluminous, but we provide it to you. So I'm just letting the public know that this has been a project that has been part and parcel of addressing the COVID impact on Guam since we got the money.
Right. No, I remember those reports. I remember it was like 300 million to go to the new hospital, and there were records of how some of that money was spent, for example, on the quarantine facilities, boat-size shaped tables, golf carts, things like that, right? Is that what we're referring to, those procurement records?
The responses to COVID, yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. So again, this 104 million, maybe Gita can break this down, these reallocation of funds. Can you break down where this 104 million came from? Because 10 million obviously came from GMH, it was moved over to the new hospital account.
No, Senator, I can't say where it came from. The only thing I can say is it came from DOA, because we have the MOA, interagency MOU between DOA and Gita. Gita did not ask for certain amounts of money. It was allocated to us in order to accomplish this project.
Okay, so I guess, Mr. Byrne, can you break that down? The 104 million, we know that 10 million came from GMH to make for the 104 million, right? For the new hospital account? Or the new hospital fund that Gita is administered through Gita?
I think I need to turn it back to Gita, because that was 104 million or thereabouts was determined to be the amount that was estimated for the infrastructure to cost.
Okay, Senator, so I mean, the budget for the project was power being 35 million, water 26 million, wastewater 36, administrative fee 1 million, and civil engineering 5 million. Now, these estimates were given to us from the utilities based on what they believed would cost to install utilities for the area. So with these amounts, you know, we're looking at a 104,843,734.97. So where the ARP comes from, we can say, Gita can say how much it would cost to do the utilities based on the information given to us from those agencies. But as far as where the funds come from in order to give it us to do the projects, that's what Gita can comment on.
And Senator, ever since September, August of 2024, we were letting the agencies, the recipients of the money, know you got to spend the money or obligate it, or else we're going to pull it, because we're not going to lose any money. So any number of agencies had an allocation, and were not able to satisfy the governor and, quite frankly, myself, that they were going to be able to spend this money, and we didn't want to lose a penny. So there's back and forth with any number of agencies. Are you going to be able to do this? Because I need you to show me you're going to do this. And if you can't show me you're going to do this, we're going to pull it, because there are other things that we can allocate the money to. And as the hospital amount went down, and I think you're correct, it was at one time 300 million, then basically whatever was left, we needed to be able to see whether or not we could fill that bucket. So it was a reverse engineering, not we had this and we went this way.
Okay. Yeah, because when we had the informational briefing for GMH, the new hospital, it was during that that briefing, and I actually wrote a letter in February 24th, 2025, to Mr. Byrne regarding how that $10 million was reallocated to GITA for the new hospital. But I requested if you could clarify on whether any other government agencies, including mayor's offices, submitted plans on or before the December 2nd, 2024 deadline, and that was a deadline that I believe you guys had set that GMH didn't even know about. So it didn't meet the U.S. Treasury obligation requirements and were subsequently reallocated. I respectfully request a detailed breakdown for each agency that included the initial allocation amount, the amount received or reallocated, and the destination of any reallocated funds. So I just wanted to know what was the breakdown of money that was taken from these other government agencies.
I respectfully asked my colleague from BBMR to respond.
And is that the breakdown of the 104 that was given to?
It was a deadline that his agency not unreasonably imposed.
Can you provide a breakdown of how much, where these monies, what agencies were subject to this reallocation aside from GMH?
Yeah, Senator, I made reference to the report that is provided on the 5th of the month. So you're asking for a very enormous task for what was available, say, in July of 2024, and then how amounts per agency was either encumbered and expended or transferred. So, I mean, if they couldn't, Mayor's Council, $16 million is what we allocated. The governor allocated to them. They couldn't even spend the first $8 million. They could not. They had ideas, and we blessed them for new vehicles, for response to emergencies, heavy equipment, north, central, south, so that the equipment would be staged and accessible. We couldn't get them to agree and issue solicitations for dump trucks, backhoes, and excavators that could be used at the village level. And even if they were going to rent them as opposed to buying because of maintenance costs, we couldn't even get that out of them, let alone, how about a new truck for everybody? No, someone an SUV, someone a car, someone a dually. So, it was like banging your head against the wall to be able just to help them expend the money that was made available to them to respond to emergencies.
Right, but you had a situation where GMH had contracts that were issued that they were going to use ARPA funds, but at the last minute they felt blindsided. So, I mean, didn't the governor obligate that money to GMH, and then all of a sudden it was pulled back?
No, it wasn't all of a sudden, ma'am. I think if you were to bring GMH in here now, maybe a little bit of time, some of the statements that they made in defense could be better stated. We sat with them. We weren't in a hurry. We went through what they had. We had people looking at whether or not this was done correctly. When a purchase order for construction is issued, not a contract, none of this stuff for the prohibition of sex offenders, You can't, oh, that's stuff that's in the back of a contract. They didn't have any contract, Senator. They were not properly obligated. And when we said that to them, what was their response? Were they responsible? Say, yes, we read the guidelines. Yes, we understand. Nobody told us. That's what we got. And I don't like throwing GMH under the bus. But you know what? I feel like I have to because they're telling you half a story. I'm here today because of GMH. God bless them. And I don't like doing this, but they're telling you a half-cooked story. I can't say it any clearer than that. You keep on harping on this, and I think it's because you want to believe them. I'd like to believe them too. So we gave them the opportunity to come down. We didn't do this because we wanted to. We did it because we had to, because we didn't think that that was going to be past muster when an audit or the Inspector General would come in to take a look. And then that was right around the time when President Trump took office. And we're all pretty worried that they were going to claw back anything that wasn't properly obligated. So put yourselves in our position for a change. We're just trying to look out for the best interests of the funds that we got to protect them and not let a dime go back to the federal government.
And I agree with you, Lester. I'm also looking out for the people of Guam, but I think a part of the reason why we are here today is this lack of transparency. So bottom line, you're saying that if we don't act on this bill, we are going to lose $104 million. There is no other pathway at all. We can't use this money for anything else.
No, we can't use the money for anything else. The better path, obviously, would be for the Attorney General to follow 5150. And we wouldn't be sitting here and hopefully those contracts would have been properly encumbered. But we are sitting here. This is a solution.
Is it the only solution?
I can't think of another, but I don't have a very good imagination.
Okay.
Senator, if there was a way, given the passage of almost a year, I like Senator Perez's characterization. People are polarized, right? I'm not that polarized, honestly. If there was a way that we could do something, we would do it. But we just don't see a way that we can do it, given what we did in December with the interagency agreement that would preserve the funding past December 31st of 2024. Once we did that, it's kind of like, and if we had a contract, which is the section that Senator Perez read, then maybe we could, do something. But we don't, unfortunately, we don't even have a contract. So when you hear and read what Mr. Byrne read, what Senator Perez read, it's all predicated on having a contract. We don't have the contract. So we can't, move anything. It's an unfortunate situation that we'd love to get your assistance to address.
But you're also asking us to circumvent and bypass the Attorney General in the middle of an active lawsuit before the district court. So, is that basically what you're asking us to do?
From my part of Manila, when we sit down and we talk, if the actions of the body, who could tomorrow take the elected AG and make him an appointee of the governor like he used to be, I think if you guys did this, then the case is dismissed because you acted. I don't think you're intervening in a manner that the courts wouldn't understand that, he doesn't have the authority to do this because he didn't act, and you thought better of it. From where I sit in Manila, then the court case goes away. And I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, but I also don't like getting in trouble. But I think if the facts behind this change, he has no case.
Senator, if I may add, as a former member of this body, it should just be clear. This body has full control over the AG. You gave him his powers, you created him, you gave him the 5150. But what this body doesn't have control over are the requirements of the federal funds. That's why we're here. We could, bash our head against what the feds want, what they're telling us we're able to do or not to do. At the end of the day, it's their peso, it's their say-so. But when it comes to the functions of the AG, the 5150 that this body created, you mandated him to look at it. And you have the AG, something to consider is in the face of the law this body passed, not this particular body, but the legislature passed, mandating him to review the 5150. I don't know how many times that's reaffirmed by the Supreme Court of Guam. He basically raised the middle finger to the legislature and the Supreme Court and says, I'm not going to review it. That's the issue that we're here today. And so if this critical piece, not just with this, but all procurements, is something that needs to be reviewed by this body, is that the intent of the legislature, that one person can just pocket veto? The legislature doesn't necessarily have that power. The executive branch doesn't fully have that power. We're all supposed to be working together. If you look back at the legislative history of the 5150, that was never the intent of it. In fact, about 3 months after they created, 6 to 9 months after they created the 5150, the legislature came back in emergency session because the entire procurement of the government in Guam started falling apart. And that's what created the SAG, to do the delegated reviews. So that's why we're here before this body. This is the power you gave. And this is the power, you have the power to modify what that is. So it's not bypassing because it's a creation of your own. And so again, the plea is there's nothing we can do about the federal deadlines. There's nothing we can do about what the federal government mandates as an obligation or not. But what we do have the power locally to do, or what this body has the power to do, is as my colleague Lester said, is to tell the AG that this is not the purpose of the 5150. And we want this to go through. This is important. Thank you.
Thank you. I have another question, though, because this bill, it does kind of open a whole lot of different issues, not just 5150. Does this bill, if it is passed, does it lock us into the construction of a new hospital in Manila?
No. It allows us to take the $104 million that is earmarked for infrastructure on lot, let's see if I got this right, 5280-3, and allow for the infrastructure work to begin.
It does not lock us into the construction of a new hospital in Manila.
No, ma'am. It allows us to spend the money on infrastructure improvements.
But we purchased all this land, excluding the one that Gora lost its lawsuit regarding the eminent domain. But didn't we purchase other land? Like from the Camacho family, the Perez family, and that was ARPA money also that was used?
Correct, yes, Senator. And I think you may have a map I can highlight for the body which lots in particular were purchased free and clear, in which Gura already has title to. That is lot 5280-3 and lot 529 L5297. The lots that are still in progress, I'll say, are the lots that connect those two purchases.
And this is where the new hospital is going to be built?
The blue, yes, that is the site where, proposed site, obviously, because this is not necessarily tied to the infrastructure, but just for transparency's sake to show this is the intended location for the hospital, who's kind of getting what in the work that we've collaborated with. Gura, Gita, and GPA, GWA.
And you mentioned something about housing.
Yes, Senator.
There's a housing, can you explain
All of that
I see
orange
that on the-
is area that we're designating to do housing. We really want to do a mixed-use development, but I have to come back to the body to get that authorized by law because there's no such thing. But ultimately, we want to do multifamily development there. But in order to do multifamily and have denser housing, being able to put more make more housing units available, we need that infrastructure to be able to support that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do multifamily there.
Are the people of Guam have to pay for the housing?
No, I have funds set
Gora.
aside with CDBGDR to construct that housing.
Okay. Will you need, or you didn't need legislative approval to purchase the property from the Camacho family and the Perez family?
Negative. Our enabling statute allows us to acquire property without legislative approval. Sige. Yeah. So our enabling legislation allows us to acquire property as defined in our enabling state legislation.
Can you cite that?
Say again?
Can you cite what part of the enabling legislation allows you to?
Give me about 30 seconds.
Sure. While we're waiting for you, Mr. Borja, in your vast experience with land acquisition, land transfers, the director of the Department of Land Management, for any purchase of land or any sort of transaction regarding land, in particular, I guess in this case, can the government of Guam, the governor, go out and purchase land without legislative approval?
Actually, land management does not take part in land acquisition.
But you've been involved with land management issues, right, for a long time?
Very few land acquisitions involvement.
Okay, from your knowledge or anybody on the panel, is legislative approval required when purchasing land for the government?
It would depend on the agency and their enabling statute.
So if you're an autonomous agency, you can...
No, it would depend on the specific agency, Senator.
Okay, so again then, can you cite what?
Yes.
law?
So 12 Guam Code Annotated, Chapter 5, GURA's Enabling Legislation, Section 5104, Powers and Duties of the Authority, in particular for acquisition. 5104J, acquire any real or personal property or any interest or estate therein by lease, option, purchase, gift, grant, donation, appropriation, bequest, devise, or by exercise of eminent domain or otherwise. Followed on by other things regarding land transactions. To own, hold, improve, clear, prepare for redevelopment of any such property, sell, lease, exchange, transfer, assign, mortgage, pledge, or otherwise dispose of or encumber any real or personal property or any interest or estate in thereof. Acquire by condemnation any interest in real property, including a fee simple title thereto, which the authority may deem necessary for or in connection with any project under this article, provided that it as a condition to the exercise of eminent domain to acquire any real property or interest therein, which the authority may deem necessary for its purposes under this article, the authority shall first adopt a resolution finding and declaring that the acquisition for such property is necessary for such purposes.
Right. For housing purposes?
So as the Senator had read, there's two houses to GURA, which is doing activities under housing project or doing activities under urban renewal. Under urban renewal, GURA is required to come present a plan before the legislature and have an approval. Urban renewal are larger scale activities that often involve entire neighborhoods where people might get displaced and lose their properties. That's what that's intended for. What we read the court ruling to be that for housing projects under that part of GURA, if we were going to use eminent domain, we would need to be clear that there is housing associated with that eminent domain specifically.
Right, I'm not talking about the eminent domain case because I think the court already established you didn't have a housing project connected to the taking, the attempted taking of that land. But with regard to the Camacho and the Paris family, did you have to have a housing project in place before you went after and purchased that property? And if you did already purchase it, didn't you need legislative approval in order to do that?
No, because the acquisition is a separate power.
So you can acquire the property without the housing plan, correct? That's what you're saying?
Say again?
I thought you had to have a housing project plan.
For eminent domain, that's what the court was clear on. If we're doing eminent domain, we have to have a housing plan. There has to be housing clearly involved in that action.
So you don't need it when you are purchasing or acquiring land?
Correct.
For example, the Camacho and the Paris properties?
Correct. In most instances, and what makes this unique, Senator, is that when we do our normal funding source is through HUD. So before we even acquire land, there's already kind of a designated project approved by HUD. And based on our enabling statute, we're required to follow that federal requirement. So we say, hey, HUD, can we have this money to do X? Same with ARP, we are now obligated to do X, right? And so the acquisition of the property and everything goes in with that has to be associated with that particular project. In this instance, it was ARP and not HUD, so slightly different process in terms of how we went about it in the acquisition. Slightly different requirements.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Esteves, and thank you to the panel. I haven't made a decision on where I stand on this particular bill, so I do appreciate you guys taking the time to come out and provide clarification.
Point of information, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
One of the counts in the AG's complaint is that GURA has no authority to acquire, construct, and provide for hospital facilities. Void are any actions taken by GURA which relate to acquiring, constructing, or providing for hospital facilities. This is the same complaint where they said they violated the law for eminent domain. So these are the issues that the court is reviewing right now. And I think that's the lack that we have here is the other side of this interpretation by GURA. Thank you.
Ms. Masi, thank you for the point of information. Once again, we had invited those, and I'm speculating that they do not want to come to appear here because they're currently in litigation, but that's a speculation on my part. Senator Borja, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is really more for GURA in regards to just kind of how we got here. I know we have spent a lot of time today talking about what are some other options should the 5150 not be removed and the governor does his infrastructure. But to clear some of the confusion, I think with the public, because even my wife asked this question, is how did GURA get involved in, it started from the hospital to GURA getting involved in this entire process?
So one of our responsibilities in our statute is to assist any part of the government as it involves housing development projects, community facilities. And, I would caution, and this body could very well determine, if GURA is not able to acquire property, even by purchase, then every public facility is thereby illegal. And you want to talk about repayment, good luck with that, because that'll be from the general fund. Now, as I move forward, we help many agencies. If we're not funding the project directly or doing the A&E, sometimes we're doing the A&E construction management, sometimes we might be doing the acquisition. In any part of that, we contribute. And so what happened, I want to say it's 2024 around April, May, if I recall. GURA was never part of the hospital project. There was a request to, what could GURA do to kind of assist and participate. And from our end, when we looked at it, before we even made a recommendation to the board to accept the loan, we looked at what the project was, what it entailed, what was being asked, and most importantly, how does this affect GURA, right? What could we do with this? And so what it turned out to be is GPA, GWA were ecstatic because these are infrastructure projects that are part of their long-term plans, but they did not have the funds for. GWA mentioned they had a consent decree, and I can say this because they've said this multiple times, is that they may not have to increase the rates because it's going to be covered by this. So that's their part. They're happy about that. Obviously, the Gita and the governor, they're looking to construct the hospital. And GURA's piece was that, okay, you loan us money to purchase property, we'll find the property, but we want to retain a portion of that so we can construct housing. That has always been. And let me say, I'm on the record. You give me a lie detector test any day, and it'll come out clean every time. That has always been the case. GURA's stake in this is we get land paid for that we can construct housing and the infrastructure is ready. It seemed like a win-win-win for the people of Guam and for us to execute our missions. And so for us, and we highlighted this, I think some of this body was in attendance in January, shortly after it was obligated, in our housing summit, where we started talking about our plans to grow that area, to turn Route 15 into a new economic corridor already primed for a five-lane road, developing in that opportunity zone for competitive grants, for extra points for competitive grants and tax incentives for private businesses that want to invest in there. And for us to be able to have the infrastructure to start this process and be a catalyst for private sector development down that entire way. That is our main goal here. But for us, it starts with housing. So yes, we're associated with the hospital, but that's Gita's thing, right? We're working together, but our main focus is the hospital. So if this land isn't acquired, if these things aren't moving forward, then we don't have the land to build housing. God knows we don't have the infrastructure to support more higher density, multifamily development that's going to provide more units, more low-income units for more people at a lower cost. There's not that many places on Guam you're going to be able to do this kind of development. And every dollar spent outside of the housing unit construction, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's land purchase, is one less unit or more that you're going to be able to have to build those units. So that's been GURA's stake in it. That's always been our stake in it. We're going to keep pushing for it because God knows there's a need for more housing.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sevis. What are when we look at, obviously, GURA playing a role in this entire project, obviously the infrastructure, I mean, what stake then? I know you talked about the stake GURA has in it, but what are the stakes in it for the people of Guam? How does this expand? I know we talked about it's supposed to provide infrastructure as far as Doña, but really, if this doesn't go through, aside from the hospital, what does the people of Guam tend to lose if this doesn't?
Well, because GURA is the landowner, obviously we attended every single land use zone, right? Every change, because it's being done on the properties, because we have to approve the survey to survey out the GPA GWA piece. As we understand it, and I think you can see the proposed on the map that I provided you guys, a 2.5 million gallon water reservoir on that site is huge for the area. It's good. I know it's going to help with pressures. I'm not going to speak for GPA, GWA, how far that goes, but remember, it's an interconnected system, right? Obviously, the wastewater treatment facility is critical to development in the area, bringing in the sewer and the sewage pump to be able to push that to the treatment plant. And then the substation is key to make sure that the grid is more stabilized. If you look, and if you may have access to it, I think it's public record. If you look at GPA's map, there's a gap between Mangilaw and Paget, where the other substation is in terms of underground lines. And if you look at what this not completely does, but gets started, is going to be a loop of underground transmission lines, primary transmission lines, between Route 1, Route 15, Route 3, and Route 16, I believe. and you're going to see on the northern side of the island. So I think that's a huge boom where our major population centers are. For us, from an urban planning perspective, community development perspective, it just makes objective sense.
Thank you. For DOA or BBM, I have a question in regards to I know the liquidation date or the deadline is December 2026. Is that there's no exception? Well, I mean, what was the latest guidance? So it's use or lose at that point. You can't. It's been very clear that you can't even request to late liquidation or a later date. Has that been very clear and in writing from Treasury or somebody?
Yes, it was further on in that release that they put in the Federal Register that I was reading.
Okay. I don't have any other further questions, Mr. Chair. I think most of the questions, especially in regards to what we can or can't do, those have already been asked, and the answer is the same. So I don't think we're going to get a different answer unless something has changed over the last couple hours. But thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the panel for coming down today, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me, Senator Borja. Senator Lujan, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, panel, for being here as well. Mr. Burns, can you just reiterate, I don't know if I heard right, but earlier, I mean, actually, you've been asked numerous times, but in particular, Senator Barnett asked a question whether or not these monies can be, again, transferred to enhancing or, I guess, revitalizing GMH, and you had said that it couldn't because it was obligated for the new hospital. Did you not say that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now, but you also, if I heard right, you also said that that it might be able to transfer the funds if it was a very similar project, right?
Well, yes.
Okay.
Possibly.
Okay.
But I think the most I've been
okay.
reflecting on this
no,
because
okay,
I really want to explain what I think I read in the Treasury guidance after the, is, and I think Senator Perez started to talk about it, the circumstance where you have a contract with a contractor and the contractor can't complete the contract, you are allowed to replace a contract. That is an example of the Treasury uses of the transferability possibility.
Okay, so basically if the contractor cannot finish the project, you can get another contractor. Is that, okay. Okay, so it's not, I mean, so it's not, I mean, so what you're saying then is you can transfer to a different contractor if the work has not been completed, but, okay, because, okay, so where does that similar, the transfer could be based on a very similar project?
If the initial project was frustrated.
Was frustrated?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Because it's a similar project, in the 37th Guam Legislature, the legislature passed, of course, the bill that was vetoed by the governor to build a hospital on Oka Point, right? Okay, it was vetoed by the governor. It's a similar project. If the governor now, if she takes a liking now to say, let me transfer this over to Oka Point instead of Mangilaw for the new hospital, still building the new hospital, just a different location, same contractor, probably cost us a lot less. What is your interpretation for that?
Well, I think Mr. Carlson made some reference to that earlier, that it would have to be infrastructure, because that was what the obligation was for.
Strictly, okay, but I mean, Hospital Point would still need infrastructure enhancement, maybe not as much.
Maybe not as much, and you may end up, therefore, not spending as much and giving some back.
Okay, so so if you divert it to that, you might return some, but you still being able to enhance the infrastructure over there based on what you're going to possibly now like to build over there as a hospital, right?
I guess it's possible, but then the procurement process would have to start afresh, and that would take time too.
Senator Lujan, the estimates that Mr. Mendiola read for the different elements, power, water, wastewater, those are specific to a site. The memorandum of agreement, interagency work request is specific to a site infrastructure, as Mr. Fernandez, Esteves said, mismatch your name because I get frustrated. You know, again, we're not talking about apples and apples when you bring up that Tumuning site.
Well, no, the reason why I was asking, because I wanted to get clarity on what was said when you said similar project. And that's what I wanted to get clarity on. When you said similar project, I didn't think it was just, I took it as a similar project. It's building a hospital as well. You're still going to be building a hospital, just a different location. You probably can use the same contractor and stuff. So it's a similar project. So that's what I wanted to get clarity on what was meant by possibly being able to transfer the funds based on a similar project.
May I ask Mr. Botha to comment on, since he hopefully will be,
and that's what I wanted to get clarity
during
on
the
that.
review,
Yeah.
if that was sufficiently similar.
Yes, Senator. I think that would be the concern is that since the agreement with the interagency agreement was based on that specific site, if you relocated to another site, that might be considered a new obligation, which would have passed the December 31st, 2024 obligation date for that.
Okay. I noticed that it might. Can we get clarity on that? I mean, can we get some, again, some
Senator,
document? Yeah.
I think it's a non-starter. I mean, it's not a clarity issue. We went down the rabbit hole in December of 2024. Now you're asking us to go back out of the rabbit hole, go down 10 yards, and go back into another rabbit hole.
No, absolutely not, Lester. No, because I'm trying to get clarity on what is meant by similar projects.
Okay.
And similar projects, because if you're going to build a hospital there, I mean, the body voted here to build a hospital there as well. So it's a similar project, and there's a similar project as well that infrastructure needs to be enhanced, even if you build it in Oka. So there's similarities. Now, there's a different location, so I just wanted, I'm trying to decide as well how to vote in this bill. So I'm wanting to get clarity on what similar project meant. So I'm not trying to argue whether going down this rabbit hole or not, trying to get clarity on what is meant by a similar project, so I can put that in perspective.
Sir, again, in my part of Manila, right, it's predicated on a contract, and being, as Mr. Burns said, the contract being frustrated, and you need to take recourse. We don't even have a contract. So again, being able to take the money and go left or right instead of straight, we don't have a frustration to deal with that would rise to being able to figure out whether or not, we could shift because we didn't even get off the ground. Again, a contract is key to what Senator Perez read, what Mr. Byrne read, and what we discussed. We're not there. We're trying to get there, but we're not there.
No, I understand. And again, as someone has oversight in utilities, I'm wanting to get clarity on that as well. So I know exactly what is meant, whether I misheard or misunderstood or things like that. So I just wanted to get clarity on what was meant by a similar project. That's it. That's all I wanted to.
Thank you very much, Senator. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Si Juzmansi, Senator Lujan. Senator Ranking Member Tina Rose Munya Barnes, you're recognized at this time.
Sizu Masi, Mr. Chair, and I'll try and make this quick in the interest of time. Again, as it relates to the procurement safeguards, I want to ask the panel up there, and if this is pertaining to you, please help me answer that. If we waive the usual procurement safeguards under 5 GCA sections 5150 and 2260, how will your agency ensure the process remains transparent and competitive? I guess I can start with Gura. And then we can work it down, please. You're on.
Just, sorry, I got to get really close. Thank you, Senator, for the question. This actually wouldn't have any, this bill would have no implication in terms of procurement. GUR is not going to be involved in any procurement activities under this particular bill. But our purpose is that if these utilities are not put in, this becomes a non-starter to develop multifamily housing in this area.
Can anybody else on the panel respond, if any?
Yes, Senator. I think, as I understand what you're asking is the if the exemption is given for 5150, the position would be is that under Section 4, the 5150 review would be done by someone different. In this case, myself as the GSA Procurement Counsel, similar to what is also provided in 5150, and I think as amended. Public Law 38-157 in 2010 allowed for the Attorney General to appoint Special Assistant Attorney Generals to do that review for him. And in this case, there's not a intention to waive any review process, but the procurement review would just be done by different counsel in this case. And the Section 22601 just provides that normally for contracts for other agencies, the governor's signature and the attorney general's signature is required on those contracts. In the case of power and water, that is not the case. Power and water does not require for their contracts. They simply require for any contract over $1 million, they require the approval of their board, the CCU, and then the Public Utilities Commission weighs in for anything over $1 million. So in that case, those contracts would be approved by the CCU and the Public Utilities Commission. The Attorney General and the Governor do not sign off on power and water contracts. The only thing the Governor and the Attorney General would sign off for is if water or power borrows money and they go out for bond, because obviously those are approved by the legislature, the Governor, and the Attorney General's office if they borrow money on the bond market.
Anybody else? No? Okay. I guess then, Mr. Botha, on that.
Just a point of information, Mr. Chair.
Please proceed with your point of information.
I apologize for the interruption, but
no problem.
There was just an article while we were sitting in here that came out that GPA had a meeting, and they said, GPA Legal Counsel Marianne Woloshuk said the grant-funded project will not require final approval from the PUC, only a notice to the PUC. Just want to put that on the record. They said they're ready to go with it.
Thank you, Senator Chalahi. You may proceed, Ranking Member Munya Barnes.
Thank you. And then as a follow-up, can you explain these specifically what internal controls you will put in place to prevent any loss of transparency or fairness once these statutory protections are removed?
Well, I think, Senator, the same would be is there is nothing in this bill or otherwise that doesn't requires any solicitation to follow the procurement law. I mean, there's nothing in here that doesn't require that. So simply that any review of that would have to make sure that those agencies go out, they have a bid that's put out there with adequate specifications, and then it's put out for bid. It's a public notice for the bid. the bidders are given adequate opportunity to ensure that any questions they may have as to specifications, questions as to time period for performance are adequately answered. Then after that, their proposals would be received. The proposals will be evaluated by the agencies, Power and Water, and then after that, there would be a selection. After the selection is made, the final contract would have to be reviewed, to determine that it has the necessary requirements and clauses in it pursuant to the procurement law. And after that, if there's a bidder and barring any protests, an award would be made. I think in each phase of that, certainly the public would be aware of the contract being put out. It's a public contract. And then certainly upon completion, the procurement record is reviewable by anybody can request that. And so I do not see that there should be anything done differently other than should be done similarly to any normal procurement that is done currently by the utilities.
Okay. I think as I look at this measure and seeing what we can do and looking that and making sure that when exemptions are given, that we look at the monitoring and the checks and balances that go in when we're allowed to give authorization to move forward and to facilitate on the issue at hand. My take is to help maintain a transparency and checks and balances. Are the agencies willing to provide reporting requirements and to the legislature if the exemptions go into effect?
Senator, there already are reporting requirements in place, but certainly any document that's a public document, we'd certainly be happy to make available to the legislature.
Okay. Another question I have is, can you confirm how much of the $104 million in the ARPA funds must be dedicated specifically to the campus, and how much will remain unspent? Anybody up there?
Yes, ma'am, Senator. I read earlier, but the budget for the project for these utilities, it is $35 million for power, 26 million for water, 36 million for wastewater, administrative fee of 1 million, and civil engineering of 5.492.
Can you repeat again from the administrative portion down? I didn't get it.
Administrative fee of 1 million, civil engineering 5.492.
Okay, and that's the last one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What are the risks if the utility infrastructure projects do not move forward quickly enough to meet the December 2026 expenditure deadline? I don't know if that was asked earlier. I'm sorry, I stepped out for a minute.
In general terms, Senator, these types of projects involve the acquisition of long lead items. I don't have all the details of those long lead items, but I know that both GPA and GWA are generally faced with placing an order well in advance of a required delivery date. So as time goes by, the risk in acquiring these long lead items in time for them to be delivered and therefore the funds to be transferred, it increases every day.
Okay. So then how does the installation of utilities on this lot 5280-3 directly support ARPA's required purpose of building a new medical campus?
Well, it's not a required purpose, it's a permitted purpose under the ARPA funds as Mr. Carlson explained, we met with the Treasury. We asked, could these funds be used for a hospital? The Treasury said, we've had a similar inquiry from other states, and we will consider it and get back to you. And they called us and said, yes, you may use it for a hospital, and we're going to put that statement into what turned out to be the interim final rule.
Okay, the project scope and the community impact says that besides supporting the proposed hospital site, what broader benefits will this utility work bring to the villages, both Mangilao, Bargada, and other surrounding areas?
Well, Senator, according to the utility agencies, with GWA specifically, their plan was to bring in sewer lines, as well as drill production wells. And what this would do for the entire area is increase water pressure. From what they told me, was to increase water pressure as well as capacity. Now, with the sewer lines that they have communicated that they want to bring in, it would allow for developability of the area to include just about everything. It would be needed for a hospital if a hospital were to be located there. It's needed for the multiple family dwelling that Gura is talking about, as well as any other development in the area, because right now development is extremely limited because of the lack of these utilities, this infrastructure. With GPA had stated that, or had communicated to Gita that putting a substation in this area would allow for much quicker recovery after disaster. If you'll remember, in the last Typhoon Mawar, this area was the very last to be re-energized. And according to GPAs, that this would, having a new substation here would eliminate that. I don't know if it means that they would be first to be re-energized or what, but according to GPA, they would be the time to recover would be extremely shortened.
And just based on that, right, my next question was going to be, can you explain how this project would address the vulnerabilities experienced after Typhoon Mawar, particularly in the delays in the water restoration? So a reiteration of what you were saying earlier, based on the vulnerabilities experienced after Mawar that you just noted earlier, just a reiteration of that.
Yes, ma'am. Putting in these additional utilities, a new substation, drilling of water wells for production, as well as sewer lines, would allow for Mangilao and the area to recover much quicker from any disaster such as the one we experienced most recently with Typhoon Mawar. And so, as we all know, that this area was the very, very last area to be re-energized, both power and water. And according to the utility agencies, that would not be the case if allowed to move forward with installing utilities in the area.
So the support will be there for the village.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I promise, Mr. Chair, just several more, almost done. As it relates to this bill, given that the bill still requires Procurement Council review for legality and form, what limitations does this review have in the absence of 5 GCA sections 1550 and 22601 procedures?
Senator, I don't...
So are there any limitations?
I don't believe there are any limitations. Otherwise, I mean, I was counselor for the utilities before. As I said, we did not the exception of a bond bill, we did not require nor has, to my knowledge, ever required, at least since I was there, we did not require the signature of either the AG or the governor as put forth in 22601 on contracts. As
So
I
it
said,
does
for normal contracts, it would be the CCU approval and then the PUC approval, with the exception of grants, which notice to the PUC for that, for a grant.
So no procurement councils will be reviewing the form of contracts?
No. Procurement council would review the contract.
Okay.
22601 just requires that the governor and the attorney general sign that particular contract. So I guess what I'm saying is, for the utilities, the 22601 does not apply generally, and so the AG nor the governor would sign the contract with whatever contractor does the sewer, the water, and the power substation.
So just a reiteration to make sure, will procurement council be reviewing not just the form of the contracts, but the compliance with the remaining procurement standards if it were to go through?
Yes. So my understanding of the proposed bill is that the council, if the bill was passed, council would provide the same review for all phases of the procurement. That would be done under 5150. And I might add, prior to this AG, in January 2023, the utilities did their own 5150 review because they were generally, previously by previous attorney generals, were designated as SAGs, and so did do the procurement review, which I did for many years for power and water.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I promised 2 more questions. As it relates to the implementation and accountability, if this were to be facilitated, through what timeline can you commit to for contracting, beginning of construction, procurement of the utility infrastructure? If it were to be facilitated, I think. Anybody up there? Nothing?
Well, my understanding is that at least the first phase process has been completed and that's been delivered to the Attorney General's office. My understanding is there has been no action taken on that, but I think that would be a relatively quick review to make sure that it's ready to go out, and then the agency would advertise and put it out for bid, and then then it is sort of also dependent on prospective bidders as to whether they ask questions, how many questions they ask, and whether they need extension of time to respond and give a bid. And those sort of timelines would be up to the agency to determine how quickly they would want to do that. I think timelines would be relatively short because the clock certainly is ticking on the agency's ability to be able to finish the contract. So I think it could be an expedited process, and certainly. If this bill were passed, I would certainly commit to working with both the Power and Water Council to make sure that it could be expedited, and their general managers.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Chair, just one last question. What mechanisms will you use to document and track spending to ensure every dollar remains ARPA compliant? Maybe Ed, any?
We have a system now. ARPA is a separate fund in our financial reporting, so we know exactly when we spend ARPA money, it's charged to the ARPA fund. It's one of our, unfortunately we have a lot of funds, but it's obviously one of the largest fund, and that reporting is, as Mr. Carlson said, sent to the legislature monthly and is included in our financial statements and subject to audit. And because it's federal funds, it's subject to the Uniform Guidance Audit too.
It's subject to what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Uniform Guidance Audit. That's the specific audit of federal funds that the auditors do to ensure compliance.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else want to add anything? Gita? Anything to that effect? No?
No, ma'am. I mean, we report to DOA and DOA reports to the legislature.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, thank you very much for letting me ask all these questions. As we look at the intent of this measure and providing for the infrastructure and literally giving the opportunity for the residents within the area to not just upgrade, but to secure the infrastructure of water and what have you to this. You have the whole community wanting to see this getting facilitated, and I'm hoping that in this effort, as I said earlier before we went into the committee of the whole, Mr. Chair, that we work on this effort and take away the obstacles that are preventing this from being facilitated so that we can move forward. In first ground is to work the infrastructure that is greatly needed for our community. So thank you for giving me the time to speak on this, and I yield back to you, sir. Si Diyos masi.
Si Diyos masi palaloki. Aguloki. Ranking Member, Senator Tina Rosemary Barnes. Mr. Speaker, Speaker Blas, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you very much for the panel for being here all day. Before I proceed, Mr. Botha, you made a statement earlier about the review process that GPA and GW already have in existence, and it really didn't require the AG's approval or signature?
No, as to I was being asked about a section of the law that requires the signature normally for all contracts requires signature of the Attorney General and the Governor. That's 5 GCA 22601. The review process is set out in 5150, which just requires the Attorney General or his designee to review the contract for legality and as to form, and allows the attorney reviewing it to request for additional information to make sure that the procurement was done properly. And I think what I indicated is that prior to this Attorney General in January 2023 taking office, that the separate agencies, GSA and the utility agencies, the airport, the port, and power and water would normally get a designation as a special assistant attorney general for procurement purposes to do the 5150 review on behalf of their agencies. And that has been the case for the last 20 years. This attorney general, however, has determined that he will not issue a SAG letter to any of the in-house counsel.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, in light of that, and there was a point of information that was shared earlier by the gentlelady from Zonia, Senator Talay. If she can go ahead and repeat what she was saying about what the CCU is doing right now?
Senator Talay, do you yield to the request?
Yeah,
of Speaker
no, I'm
Ross?
sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm reading this again, and I might be mistaken that this happened at another date, not today.
Okay.
But I think they might be scheduled to be meeting today. I can't confirm yet.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I just needed those points of clarification. Anybody on the panel? Can you basically provide again to the body what the purpose of the bill is? What's the purpose of this bill?
To spend these funds on the infrastructure that it's obligated to before the deadline.
What are you asking for?
To have, well, as I understand it, you said anyone on the panel, right?
Yes, anybody on the panel.
To have another authority, another attorney who's not otherwise conflicted himself out of fair and unbiased review to be able to review the procurement as to form and legality as Section 5150 requires. So that we may move forward and spend $104 million in infrastructure to benefit the people of Guam before we have to return the money back to the federal government.
Okay. Anybody up here aware of the lawsuit, that countersuit that was filed by the governor on the 6th of November with regard to the AG's authority?
I was aware that a lawsuit had been filed. I don't know what the
countersuit basically is asking for the court to interpret and to provide ruling on exactly what you're asking this body to do.
I think the intent that you're seeking is we're asking this body to act now and act quickly because we do not know how long a lawsuit will take to resolve.
Could you ask the same thing with the courts?
Yes, we hope that you will act quickly.
Oh, so you went to mom and mom said wait, and so you come to dad so dad can give a quicker response.
I hope dad does.
And so now that's going to be dad that's going to be in trouble with mom, not you. That's what you're doing.
No.
Well, the 5150 is a creation of the legislature. The legislature created this issue that we're faced with
And according
now.
to our Constitution, the courts are the ones that interpret the law, Mr. Esteves.
Yes,
Thank
but
you.
the legislature
Okay,
can change it.
okay, thank you very much. Okay. This is to basically move on the project, because I've heard that word used over and over today, to move forward on a project that we told Treasury we wanted to use the money on. What is the project?
If you look at the map, I understand the project.
What is the project? What did we tell Treasury we're going to use the $104 million for? Or is it? Let me clarify this. This is the 104 plus the 12.5 million.
No. 104 is what GIDA has.
Okay, then I'll get to the 12.5. So the 104. What did we tell? What is it that we told Treasury that we're going to use the $104 million for?
We told them that we intended to use the money towards the building of a hospital.
Building of a hospital.
And that the first step must be the infrastructure.
But it's to build a hospital, isn't it?
That's my best recollection.
Yes, okay. It's to build a hospital. And then we have to follow the Treasury guidelines when it comes to the construction. Because I agree, your the initial final ruling was very vague about whether or not we can construct a hospital. Okay, but there was then that clarity that it can be used to construct the hospital.
Yes, so but it could be used for recipients, i.e. governments, to build a hospital.
Right. So that's what the project was for, to build a hospital.
Yes.
Okay. And earlier you had stated that you had provided Treasury with the specifics of this hospital?
Not the specifics. The specifics can mean many things. The rules ask you to respond to certain questions or points that they were, and again, 3 years ago, but I think that was.
Was there anything that's specific to Manila?
I don't believe so, because I think I mentioned it.
So we can construct a hospital, it doesn't necessarily have to be in Manila.
Well, that's up to everybody here to decide.
No. I want to know what you said to Treasury. Because then it goes to the question that was asked by Senator Perez on where the document that you're supposed to provide to us that provides the specificity with regards to how the money is being spent.
Yes, I don't believe so, because I don't believe that the Treasury required us to nominate a location.
But you just said you had a document,
Yes,
right? So
but I don't. But I
what
don't
does that
recall what it
document
said.
specify the hospital in Manilao?
I don't believe the Treasury asked
Thank
for
you.
a location.
What I'm asking you is it specific to Manilao?
I don't believe the hospital asked for a location, so it wouldn't mention Manila or any other
So we
location.
can build the infrastructure in other places other than Manilao.
If you so desire.
Well, that's okay. That's what I'm getting at. Okay, we can build the hospital because you see, there's a difference between building a hospital for the purpose of the project and then building infrastructure that will be for the hospital.
But
There's a big difference.
Yes, you're right. But as Mr. Botha said, you know, the documents that are under consideration under 5150, whoever actually performs the duties under 5150, are specific to Manilo because, as Peter said,
the reason
they
why
have
it's specific to
specific
Manilao is
costs.
because then the next line of questioning that I will get to with Mr. Fernandez. Okay. Mr. Fernandez, you mentioned earlier that when you were asked whether or not legislative approval was required for the acquisition of land, you mentioned two different cases of one which is required and one that is not. Can you repeat that?
Correct. For the record, it's Esteves, not Fernandez.
Mr. Esteves.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
That's
Yes. So the two functions of GURA, housing projects and urban renewal. Urban renewal requires a plan and legislative approval. It's actually its own section in the law that describes that, including eminent domain under urban renewal. And they're separately defined in our statute.
But housing projects don't require.
Housing projects is separately defined, does not require in the statute legislative approval.
Familiar with the loan agreement that was made between DOA and GURA on the 23rd of December 2024?
Say again?
Are you familiar with the loan agreement made between GURA and the Department of Administration made on December 23rd? Do you recall what the money was specifically for?
Acquisition of properties towards medical facilities and community development projects in the vicinity of Mangilao.
Does that fall in the line of housing development?
So long, community development, let me rephrase this. When we use the term community development, that's HUD's term. Housing projects is a 55-year-old term that hasn't been used, but when the law was generated, they modeled after the 1937 Indian and Housing Act, right? Public and Indian Housing Act. And so they used housing projects. That's where the ghetto term projects comes from. So when we use community development, it's interchangeable for housing and all associated projects for community development. 'Cause you can't have housing without, infrastructure and facilities.
But it says for development of healthcare facilities and.
Yes, correct.
So you're telling me development of healthcare facility is a housing project?
Under our statute, it's included as in connection with housing, yes.
Is it a housing project, yes or no?
So long as there's housing included with it, yes.
When did you include the housing project?
There's always intent to include the housing.
Is there any document that shows that prior to December 23, 2024?
If the law had required.
The law does require that because you said that earlier.
No, for eminent domain it does.
No, you also said other than an eminent domain, you needed it for housing development.
No, the court case said for eminent domain.
Do you have a housing development prior to December of 2024?
We had initial plans for housing development prior to December 2024. Say again?
In this area?
Absolutely.
To include the medical facility?
So when we were considering acquisition, right, the determination was made not just for the medical facility, but what portions GURA is going to be able to use. That was part of our planning process. What portions could remain for GURA or would remain for GURA to construct housing. As the Senator Borja had mentioned or had asked, is our stake in this has always been housing development. Otherwise, we had no stake in this. So it was a beneficial relationship between GPA, GWA to meet their mission Gita to meet their mission and for Gura to meet our mission. That's
Okay.
pure
You know,
fact.
in the structure of a contract and everything, when you have an and, it means there's two separate.
It says healthcare facilities and community development. It means together. And it means together.
And
Together,
means
correct.
together, but they're
Yes.
separate, right?
No, and means together.
No, it should.
Or means separate.
It should say housing, it should say community development project to include the development of healthcare facility.
Healthcare facilities
thank you for trying to
and
do
housing.
this, okay?
Yeah.
But I think the issue here with regards to the 5150 is because did you obtain this property without, I mean, you obtained this property without legislative review that was necessary?
It was not necessary. If you can cite me in the law where it's necessary.
You lost the previous case 2 days ago.
That was
based
on eminent domain.
And the eminent domain, also.
The judge actually
reference the
specifically
same
notes
fact.
it doesn't.
Anyways.
The K doesn't impact acquisition by
And
purchase.
I find this very interesting because then it also says, if it cannot be used by December 31st, 2025, it may be reprogrammed by the lender for eligible uses consistent with the 2022 final rule, 2023 interim final rule, and 2023 obligation interim final rule issued by the U.S. Department of Treasury. So there is the leeway of being able to use this money elsewhere, based on your contract.
If it's eligible.
Yeah. It's eligible.
But I think, Speaker, that was before the deadline fell, right? So it's after we're now after the deadline fell, so it would not be consistent.
You mentioned here all the other rules that you're following right now.
Yes.
It's all the rules you're following right now.
May I clarify?
Sure.
What I was endeavoring to say was that agreement was signed before the obligation deadline. So we could repurpose it because the obligation deadline hadn't yet occurred. But after the obligation deadline, we can't repurpose it because that would not be consistent. Before the obligation deadline, provided we were consistent with the rules and regulations, we could, although I don't know that we did.
So is there an addendum to this loan agreement?
Why would it need an amendment, sir?
Well, because you just finished saying that whatever you put in this loan agreement is no longer applicable.
I'm sorry?
Whatever what you just finished saying was that now the rule that you're following makes everything else that you were following inapplicable.
I believe there's also a severability clause in that loan, so parts that are not legal or automatically severed.
Sure. I mean, but the question that I have here is basically, as you put here, that there was the ability to be able to use this money elsewhere.
Before the deadline fell, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to Gura and the housing project, there is documentation that exists right now within Gura that shows that there's always been a plan prior to December 23rd, 2024 to be able to.
There's been intentions.
There's a difference between intention. Yeah. I can intend to go to McDonald's after tonight, okay, to go get a Big Mac. And whether or not I do that is irrelevant. Is there documents that show that the Gura was developing, was planning
that a plan was in place, or that a plan was in development?
That a plan was in place and being developed.
Before December 2024?
Before December 23,
No, I apologize.
2024.
Before 2024, there was not a plan in place, but in January 2025, we presented to the community of Guam in a housing summit of our intent. But if that's not good enough, Mr. Speaker, I don't know how more transparent we can be.
Well, it's like putting the cart before the horse. Okay? Okay? You knew you had the money and you had to be able to jump through hoops, and you decided to jump through hoops after you got the money. You made the promise before you got the money, but the promise could not be fulfilled.
It could still be fulfilled.
It could be fulfilled now, yes, but you didn't have the promise when you got the loan. By the way, how are you going to pay back this loan?
Oh, it doesn't need to be paid back. It's obligated to Gura.
It's a loan agreement, but it doesn't have to be paid.
No, the funding remain. Oh, let me answer that question. If we were to, let me answer the question,
Sure.
Senator, without you laughing. Thank you. In order for the loan to be repaid back, once Gura purchased the property, we would transfer it to Guam in a substantial enough portion, retain certain portions for our development, and that would satisfy the repayment of the loan.
Okay.
So that's our transaction in this.
Okay.
You know, because the legislature doesn't support Gura in any way to develop projects
so this was
or
put
build
together
housing.
to be able to satisfy the requirements necessary by December 31st, yet you didn't have the requirements in place to be able to do this, and you went ahead.
The requirements under ARP was made before the deadline.
It doesn't matter. You took out this loan. Okay, this loan was given to you prior to the requirements put in place.
Which requirements, Mr. Speaker?
The intent, you had to have a plan. You had to have a housing plan. You didn't have a housing plan. You just admitted that you submitted one afterwards.
Sure.
Okay? Which goes now to why the Attorney General doesn't want to move on 5150.
Sure, we could speculate that, but he's not here to answer.
Well, obviously, neither are GWA and GPA to answer.
But they're
how
separate
gonna do this.
issues anyways.
No, they're not. No, they're not, Mr. Esteves. They're not separate issues. It's blinking, Mr. Chair. My time is up. Thank you very much.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker. That has concluded our first round. I'm going to take a very short recess and dismiss the panel. We will come right back for 5 minutes on comments. Senators, there are no amendments in the drive, so that means that we have no amendments, and once I put this gavel down, there are no amendments to be proffered as per the rules outlined in the opening. We are in a 2-second recess. Senators, we are back from recess. At this time, I will ask, are there any members of the body that wish to use 5 minutes for comments? We have no amendments. Anybody wish to be recognized for comments in round 2? Hearing and seeing none, we are at recess, and we will rise when we get a motion to rise. Senator Chaloy, if you would like to make some comments, please proceed. 1 more second recess. The legislature is back in session. Senators, we are having our regular session tomorrow that's been called by the Speaker at 10 a.m. So I'm asking now the body for any comments, remarks you want to make. There are no amendments in the drive to be debated, so the floor is open for your 5-minute comment period at this time in the second round. Anyone wish to have comments in this second round? Senator Tulao, you recognize.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say generally, it's still very difficult for us with the information that we've been given to make a decision because it's not clear. GITA is contracting with GWA and GPA, but would not bring them down here, or I guess the legislature is not enough to require them to come down and show us the projects. The CCU meeting for today, I guess, was canceled, the special and the general meetings, so I'm not sure what's the implication of that. But if you read this decision from the court, they went through a very extensive analysis of what the money was given to GURA for, and it talks about this hospital and the community development projects. But in the end, after all their analysis, they conclude that the community development projects did not include housing. And they cite in their citation of the facts, the resolution calls an objective basis for its action does not reference a housing project. And then they cite the declaration of the director. They cite that GURA has not made any determination that defendants' properties were slums or blighted. And all of these, of course, they put the citations in here. GURA did not add any low-income housing components to the medical campus master plan. So to say that, I don't know, it seems like we're hearing conflicting in here, whether this is for housing or not for housing, and whether because if it was, then the court would have recognized that. But they recognized the opposite, which is why I'm confused, and I would like additional clarification. Also, if they have to remove, in one of the articles, they're quoted as saying that they might have to return the money that they used for the condemnation because now it's found improper. If they have to return that money, return it to who? Do they return it to the Treasury? Are they going to be able to repurpose that? If they're able to repurpose that, then that would give us an answer as to whether we're able to repurpose the other funds too. And I thought the speaker's questions were excellent, that if they're not committed in between us, Guam, and the Treasury to a site, it says it goes to hospital, healthcare facilities, I think is what it said in the documents to the Treasury. But again, we don't have those documents because when the speaker sent a FOIA to the Governor's Council for the documents, we don't have those. We can't even see what documents it is that the AG won't review or won't sign. And that's very, again, confusing to me because they're saying bypass the AG because he's a bad guy or all kinds of things. When in reality, the court said he was correct. That's the bottom line. So if he was correct on one, how do we know he's not correct in the others? And this GSA's attorney wants us to believe that he hasn't reviewed anything at all. I can't believe that they would ask us to change it from one lawyer to another and not know what the outcome is going to be. Why not fix what's incorrect and make it correct so that we can move forward legitimately? Otherwise, in the end, when the courts rule, we might lose the money. But they want to tell us it's the legislature that might lose the money? Absolutely not. They put these projects in on December 2024 at the deadline. The AG filed suit in December 2024. If what I'm looking at is correct, the bottom says the suit was filed December 2024. And some of the complaints that he lists are exactly what GURA is saying the opposite answers to. That's very confusing. And that's why I really don't believe we, the legislature, are equipped to move on this. We're going to bypass not just the AG, we're going to bypass the court system, the court's interpretation of whether that was legal or was not. And if we could save the money by doing that, maybe, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. We're just going to save review from the AG, but we're not saving the money because the courts might ultimately rule that they were illegal. And I think the courts know the pressure that we're under, the time constraints that we're under, and they seem to have come out with that decision pretty timely. So maybe they will come out with the others. Maybe they're going to move these cases to Superior Court more timely than what they're doing right now.
Thank you,
All
Senator.
of that, we have no testimony as to that. We have nothing here to tell us what is the status in the courts.
Thank you, Senator.
How emergency is this? And so I just say, I can't decide either way, but I feel like it's premature for us to decide that without additional information. And we should either extend the information, bring everybody down, and let them tell us the truth so that we can make decisions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments? Senator Gumatata, you recognize.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Public interest. Case law is clear that the combination of those two words or the phrase is used by the executive branch multiple times publicly and in communication to us in recent months signifies an importance of an issue to this island community in the sense that the operations of the government of Guam may be substantially affected one way or the other by the issue's resolution, good or bad. I understand the issues of consequence in terms of governmental function and resources, and they indicate that public interest. We heard it a lot this afternoon. Mr. Chair, case law also notes that the Attorney General's duties to agencies regarding procurement and contract review depend on whether the agency is subject to the Central Accounting Act under 5 GCA Section 22601. Agencies subject to the General Accounting Act must have all their contracts approved by the Attorney General as to form and legality. All agency contracts must be approved by the Attorney General. The law does not give these agencies an alternative review. Thus, it's my belief that the Attorney General owes a responsibility to these respective agencies to review all contracts so the agencies can function and effectively serve the people of Guam. 2024 Guam 18, Mr. Chair, says in part, relative to mandatory duties regarding procurement and contract review, quote, for agencies not subject to the Central Accounting Act, including the amici, the Attorney General's responsibilities are different, as these agencies do not require the Attorney General's, well, let's say there's review, an approval for all contracts, but the Attorney General must still act as legal advisor during all phases of the solicitation or procurement process when it is estimated to result in an award of $500,000 or more. I do not think I did read that wrong in the High Court's ruling. The reviewing of solicitation and procurement contracts of $500,000 or more for all executive branch agencies is a mandatory duty of the Attorney General of Guam because under Guam law, only the Attorney General or his designee can perform these services. The Attorney General has an attorney-client relationship with executive branch agencies. This is his job. Mr. Chair, it is the one that he and his office really, they need to do. I will just want to add, Mr. Chair, that there is a dispute before our sister branch of government. There is a dispute similarly in the federal judiciary. The language that is in this proposal before us is in question today. Legislation cannot and should not direct a court to decide a pending case in a specific manner. It is with this, Mr. Chair, that I lodge my deep reservations supporting the bill. The matter is in litigation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Gumatata, I saw you earlier speak of Blas, and we'll continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, thank you very much for chairing today's committee of the whole. And I think that as a result of that, there was a lot of information that came to light with regard to the purpose of the whole bill. It goes beyond the asking to waive the process of the 5150. I think that what was exposed here today is that it was all the matters that pertain up to the 5150. One is the procurement and of the land that is necessary to put this infrastructure in, whether or not that was obtained legally or not. I think that in the discussions, what we found is that they put the cart before the horse, okay? that they used the justification to be able to get the land so that they could put a housing project, which they didn't talk about until later. There was never a housing project when they started, which then calls to question the legality of whether or not that land was obtained legally. Now, if that land was not obtained legally, is what the question before the court is, then there's two possibilities. One, there's no place to be able to put the infrastructure that they want to put in. Secondly, the possibility that we're going to have to pay that back already. Now, do we want to be a party to that, to that whole process? I think it's disingenuous and it's not prudent for us to go down into that process. Otherwise, and then just as important is the matter that is before the body today is a matter that is already in the judiciary. It's being decided on by the courts. Our system of government has set up that while we create the policy, executive enforces the policy, it's the judiciary that interprets it. And that is what they're being asked to do. And then for us to be able to intervene and to move that process along, they're saying, never mind that we have a judiciary, never mind that we have that third branch of government that is necessary, that is designed to sit up to be able to address that. Just come back to the legislature because we create the laws. But at the same time, that balance, that check and balance, called the judiciary, is there. And I don't think that is prudent for us to be able to step into that process. Okay, they said that this thing has been in existence for well over 10, 11 months. Why did they take them until November 6th of this, okay, to be able to ask the courts for the declaratory judgment? Why didn't they ask them that since the beginning? Would we be in this position today? Okay, because again, it is far beyond 5150. Okay, it is also now the acquisition of those properties, which puts everything in jeopardy. So therefore, Mr. Chair, I have to agree. There's documents that they were supposed to provide. There was testimony that could have been provided to be able to provide some clarity, but they chose not to do so. So what's the urgency? Why do you throw it on us to ask us to make a decision when only half the information is provided to us? That's disingenuous. Don't blame us for that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Speaker. Anyone else wish to make a comment or have comments during the second round? Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
I just want to highlight for the people of Guam the perfect example our retiring speaker has just shown us regarding the partisan games that are played in this chamber regarding the Attorney General's office. They say, oh, we cannot get involved because this is currently in the courts. But the legislature had no problem doing that during the budget season. When the Attorney General's office was in the courts because he was hiring unclassified employees in violation of hiring practice, this legislature had no trouble sneaking in that change in law in the dead of night during the budget session. So I reject this idea that suddenly this legislature is paralyzed and can do nothing. This legislature, this majority, is actively picking a side, and they are making it clear it is the Attorney General that they pick. They are putting a $104 million bet on the Attorney General. And for what? Have any of you gotten any, what's the word I'm looking for, confirmation or guarantee from the Treasury Department that we can move this money from Manilao to Oka? Mr. Speaker, have you received any guarantees from the Treasury Department that you could cite for us? Mr. Chair, I would like to ask the Speaker if he has seen any guarantees from the Treasury Department that we can move this money. What guarantees do you have that what you want to do is even possible?
Mr. Speaker, do you yield?
Yes, I'll yield to that question. And a question that I was at that I asked Mr. Byrne and then the panel earlier. Okay, was there anything specific to Manila? They said no. So you can build a hospital almost anywhere on this island, provided it's a healthcare facility. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. The chair has responded. You continue with your comments, Mr. Senator Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't understand this resistance to spending this money on infrastructure for Manilao. The choice before us is simple. Do we want to spend $104 million in ARP funding in Manilao, or do we want to give it back to the federal government? And for whatever reason, everybody wants to stick their heads in the sand like they can't see what's going on. But it's clear. This legislature gets involved in spats between the Attorney General and the executive branch whenever it suits them. And now they show their moral cowardice to hide behind separation of government after they've already shown they are willing to violate that principle. No principles. No rules, except jungle rules. Might makes right. We want to do it this way, so, sorry, Governor, $104 million lost. I have always said that we can do more with cooperation. And I have never seen it between the legislative branch and the executive branch. It is this constant petty squabble when we should be figuring out when and how to get that money spent. The time for discussion on where that money was to go ended when it was encumbered on December 2024. I've been in that situation before. I've argued against the locations of power plants in the war. Argued, why are we giving them to the same companies that blew up the previous power plant? I argued and I fought and I did my advocacy to get the hospital, to get the power plant in a better location. But when the time was nigh, when the decisions were made and the time for arguments was done, you won't find me trying to sabotage the new power plant. But that's what we find here. People who aren't getting their way are saying, if I can't get my way, then we get nothing. We get nothing. And the people of Guam lose. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Senator Parkinson. On the second round, comments. Any senator wish to make any comments that hasn't already made comments? Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my approach to this whole committee of the whole was, let's get the facts so we can make an informed decision. And what I heard was an inadequate response to the questions that were posed before this panel. In fact, there was even obfuscation and contradictions. So one of the things, I think it's important, one of the things I stated earlier was, it's important to move back, take a step back and not see this as a polarized personal issue. And look at what are our true constraints. So one of the constraints obviously, is the Treasury rules. What can we use? How can we spend these funds properly? And we were told there was one document that was submitted in 2023. This precedes the whole development plan that now this bill is projecting to support. And what we heard before in this panel was that it was supposed to go to build the hospital. And I think that is what our community truly needs. But having said that, you know, what are the rules? That we need clarity on that. Because one of the things the AG, the reason why I believe he actually reviewed those documents, and he had concerns. It was quoted in one of the news articles that in January 2025, the state of Massachusetts entered into an agreement with the federal government to repay $2.1 billion for federal COVID relief funds. So a lot has been said about leaving the money on the table, but what if we have to pay it back? So that is a harm that we can bring into our community if we do not do our due diligence. And if we can reprogram the money, well, first of all, there was the initial intention or initial document was to build a hospital. So I think there's not enough information to move forward with this bill, and that was the requirement for this panel, it seems, to make it clear to this body to support this bill, but it did not happen today. Perhaps the court has access to these documents and all these things that we were asking for and that the speaker FOIA'd, that a proper decision can be made, because we do not want to have to pay back funds that we do not have. Yes, we want to use the funds, we need the funds, but let's move with due diligence. And if you look at the guidance, there's so many things in here that applies to Guam. So many things. So I say, let's step back, take a look at the constraints before us. I know the urgency is felt, but we need to really, if we really want to move forward with consensus, we have to come to this decision that we don't want to risk our having to pay back the funds. Thank you.
Senator Perez. Any other senator wish to have comments during this second round? Any other senator wish to comment? Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to make comments after a long day of a lot of us asking the same questions but getting different answers. And that's kind of what we wanted this morning. People wanted to ask questions and they wanted to get answers, but again, the people we needed to really ask the questions to didn't show up. And it was said they were gun shy. I think you yourself, Mr. Chair, had kind of joked that you know, they're in the middle of an active litigation, and so maybe that's why they didn't show up. But here we are, and I think the lesson in all of this, going back to my first term, is really the lack of consensus and the lack of transparency, and the manner in which the governor has chosen to pursue the legacy medical complex. And I mean, going back to Eagles Field, many things were done in the dark. The deals were made, and then after the fact, they attempted to come to the legislature and ask us to rubber stamp the goings on that had happened, and we didn't, in the name of transparency. And then so the governor moved a little further up the road, literally and figuratively, by then deciding on Edagaga and the current site for the proposed medical complex. And you know, the whole time I think it's been very consistent here in this legislature and the previous one. We've been very consistent in asking, not even asking, really begging the governor and her people to come to the table to discuss this in the light of day so that, you know, we can move forward together. Because I think what's happening in this session and what has happened just with everything that has to do with this new medical complex in Manilao is, again, it's been a lot of, my way or the highway. And that is just simply not working together. Like, I want to support the bill. I do. And I would only be able to do that if my curiosity was satisfied, if we got the answers to the questions. With or without the hospital, is this infrastructure, how much is this infrastructure going to benefit the area? Because as we heard from Mr. Estevez, and we've tracked the history of this, when Gura got this loan, it was the hospital first, and then maybe some housing. But now in this bill, it's apparent that they've kind of switched that around and are now putting the housing and the infrastructure and the benefit of the residents before the benefit to the hospital. And part of this is, I think one of my colleagues back here had said the discussion ended in December 2024, but I would just say, with all due respect, the discussion was never had. We never had a discussion. What we have had is a governor who's pursuing this agenda of the medical complex. And, granted, we're trying to see if that's well within her authority, but it's up to her to execute. But I'm just saying the lesson here, I think, is if you don't bring along people who want to work together and you have, yes eyes looking at everything, you have advisors who are telling you what you want to hear, then you get your bubble burst by the court. You get your bubble burst by senators who are just asking, really, like, these are the types of questions that the people of Guam want us to ask. I don't think anybody's getting really personal in here. And as far as the Attorney General goes, I think that we want an AG, whether it's this one or any other AG, to do their job and to do the due diligence and to review these contracts and these proposals and the actions of our government relative to whether they're legal or not. And I think by pursuing these cases, the AG has basically said that he believes that these actions are illegal. I mean, going back to the first step that was taken that in many ways poisoned the well, and that's the open government notice, which the administration hasn't bothered to correct. And so I agree with, pretty much everything that's been said on this floor today. I mean, it would be a damn shame to lose that money, but frankly, the governor drove us down this road, got out of the car and said, hey, legislature, I left it running, so now we're in this position where we're trying to get people off the hook who would actually be responsible for losing this money. I don't think the legislature can be blamed for losing this money, because at every juncture, we have asked the governor to work together for the benefit of the people of Guam. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to offer just some comments and my observations of the goings-on of today.
Shijusmasi, Senator Barnett. Any comments in round two from any senator who has not spoken yet? Any comments? So we will close round two at this time, and I'm going to now recognize the Vice Speaker for a recommendation of the Committee of the Whole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I move that Bill 15-S, an act that authorizes the installation of utilities infrastructure on Lot 5280-3, Manila, utilizing American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 funds, with the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole to be placed on the third reading file.
On the motion, the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole to place Bill number 15-S in the third reading file, are there any objections? Hearing no objections, motion passes. Mr. Vice Speaker, I now recognize you on a motion to rise from the Committee of the Whole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to rise from the Committee of the Whole with the recommendations that Bill 15-S be placed in the third reading file.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing none, we will now rise from the Committee of the Whole, and the Speaker will assume the chair as at the dais as Speaker. We are the Committee of the Whole. Committee of the Whole is in recess.
Legislature is back from session. Senator Duane, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to report back to the body after deliberation on Bill number 15-S, the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole to place into the third reading file.
On the motion to place the bill number 15-S in the third reading file. Senator from Zonia, you recognize?
Just want to see. Yeah. I'm just going to object to that recommendation at this time to place the bill in the third reading. As stated in our final comments, there are still, I think, questions that can be answered to help us to vote on this bill. And it isn't as clear as, oh, we're going to lose the money if we don't do this, because it sounds like we're losing some money already. And I want to be clear about that. If there is a way that we can not lose the money, then we should do that. And I don't think taking another day to consider that, to get the information from those people that refuse to attend today, or from the governor's office, that can help us. And that we can make a better decision if we just take a little time. So I would ask that we just either not vote on that today, or if you're going to put it to third reading, that we recess at least until tomorrow to get that additional information. There's some things that were just said that we cannot even verify at all. And it's just opinion as opposed to, the facts or the documents.
Okay, on the motion, there is an objection. There is an objection. Okay, so therefore, all those in favor of the motion to send the bill to third reading, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move that we proceed to the third reading file to act on Bill number 15-S without engrossment.
Objection.
Okay, on the motion, notwithstanding the House rules that we proceed to the third reading and vote without engrossment, there is an objection. There is an objection. Okay, it's non-debatable.
Mr. Chair.
It's non-debatable. It's non-debatable.
I know. I would move, though, that we recess until tomorrow.
We have to dispense with this motion.
I think the motion to recess is a higher motion.
Mr. Speaker, I think we have a motion under consideration.
Okay. Thank you. I just need clarification, and unfortunately, she is right. It does take precedence to be able to. Okay, on the motion to recess until tomorrow, there is an objection. All those in favor to recess until tomorrow in the third reading, to take vote in the third reading. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion fails. Okay. On the motion now, notwithstanding the House rules that we proceed to the third reading and vote without engrossment, there has been an objection. Do you still hold? Okay. There is an objection.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, because, the courts are taking their time to consider this very, very complex issue, and all I'm asking for is 1 day to consider that.
Thank you very much. Okay, so on the motion, notwithstanding the House rules that we proceed to the third reading to vote without engrossment, there is an objection. All those in favor of proceeding to the third reading, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion carries. Okay, we are now on item 18, consideration of the daily file. There's only one thing, that's bill number 15-S. Okay. Clerk, please read the title.
Bill number 15-S, introduced by Committee on Rules by request of Imaga Hagen Guahan, the Governor of Guam, in accordance with the Organic Act of Guam. An act to authorize the installation of utilities infrastructure on Lot 52803-3 in Manila, utilizing American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 funds.
Roll call.
Vice Speaker Atta. Vice Speaker Atta, nay. Senator Barnett. Senator Barnett, pass. Speaker Blas.
No.
Speaker Blas, nay. Senator Borja. Senator Borja, pass. Senator Calvo.
Mr. Speaker, move to excuse members not present.
On the motion, any objection? So ordered.
Senator Calvo, excused. Senator Duenas. Senator Duenas, nay. Senator Gumatautau. Senator Gumatautau, nay. Senator Lujan. Senator Lujan, nay. Senator Munya Barnes. Senator Munya Barnes, yay. Senator Parkinson. Senator Parkinson, yay. Senator Perez. Senator Perez, pass. Senator Salas Mazzanani. Senator Salas Mazzanani, nay. Senator San Agustin. Senator San Agustin, excused. Senator Taitagui. Senator Taitagui, excused. Senator Terlahi.
Nay.
Senator Terlahi, nay. Senator Barnett. Senator Barnett, pass. Senator Borja. Senator Borja, nay. Senator Perez. Senator Perez, pass. Senator Barnett. Senator Barnett, pass, nay. Senator Perez. Senator Perez, nay. Pass, nay.
Bill number 15-S received 2 yeas, 10 nays, 3 excused. Bill number 15-S is duly failed by the body. We are now open for brief extension of remarks. Any remarks? Gentlelady from Georgia, you recognize, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think if there's a way the legislature can review these matters with all the complete information, that we should do that, and we should allow time, despite the holidays, to do that. And I just think when people want to talk about cooperation between the branches, that's exactly what we need. If they want us to make decisions, we need information. And if they want us to rely on plans, then we should have it from the source's mouth and not hear it third party or whatever. I just don't get that at all. This is a legislature. Why are we not entitled to see the documents that they've sent to the Treasury or any communication with the Treasury? Why are we not entitled to see GPA and GWA's plans? Why if GURA said they were purchasing land, condemning land for hospital purposes, and now they want to say it's for housing purposes, and the court said, you never said that anywhere. That's what they said. And no one wants to tell us today, are we going to lose those funds? And that's really what we need. We need them to answer questions as best as possible with actual facts, not opinions, so that then we can decide. And when they say it, what was the word that was used? Something like inefficient to have a system where the Attorney General gets to review documents. That's not inefficient. That was put in place for a reason, to prevent corruption. So I don't get all the personalities that I've got messages like crazy today about negative things about the Attorney General's character and personality, and that should sway me to disregard the court. I don't think the court is inefficient in making a decision that it was illegal. They're doing their best. How is that inefficient for the AG to say, it's illegal, I'm going to challenge you? Isn't that what we want him to do? I don't agree with him on everything, but I agree that whoever is the AG and whoever is the governor and whoever are the senators, we all have roles to do here. And if the AG truly believes something is illegal, we want him to challenge that. He told them months ago what he thought was illegal. When he told GWA, I think it was, that they gave raises illegally because they didn't do the open government law, they had to put those raises on hold, go back and fix it. That's what we expect. We don't expect, we're not going to do anything because we don't agree with you, AG, that it's illegal, and we are just going to go until the last minute and then tell the legislature that it's an emergency, waive all the laws, waive all the protections for the people of Guam. You don't get to see the plans. You don't get to see any housing plans. None, because there were none. There may be housing plans under CDBG-DR, but there were none in relation to these properties. No one talked to us about condemning properties, even for a hospital. So, to me, there's so much of this that is avoidable. I'm a big believer in we all need to discuss what is the plan. We need consensus. And we can't get consensus. Something's so wrong with that. We don't need consensus to bypass the laws. We need consensus on the plans. We need consensus how we're going to move forward. So why can't we just get those laid out for us? There's so many pending lawsuits, I can't even keep track of them. I've asked for an accounting of them. Sounds like we're only settling one thing here. Well, we're going to end up with so many lawsuits continuing to threaten the funds and whether we're going to lose those funds. And I would like to make a resolution here that guarantees we're not going to lose the funds. I'd like to see GW and GPA come in here and tell us what they told the CCU back in February, that they're going to proceed no matter what. They weren't concerned about the AG. They weren't concerned about the legislature. They said they were able to proceed. And in fact, if they ran out of time, they were able to cover it with their own money. That's what GPA said. I want to know if that's still true. They canceled their meeting. It's peculiar. I just say, if we're all one government, then they should all be telling us the truth, not having us beg not giving us coy, cute answers or supposed legal opinions without a lawyer in the room. That's all. I mean, give me a break. Some of the editorials want to write, it's the legislature that's going to lose $100 million. Not today. We should still be able to come back in
Point of
here
order,
and
sir.
discuss this
Time.
if there is more truth for us to discuss. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Brief extension of remarks. Any other colleague? Gentleman from Momoto to Mike, sir, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope the people of Guam heard that you are being protected from $104 million in infrastructure in Manilao. That's what your legislature is choosing to do today, patting themselves on the back over it. We want to talk about consensus. This body has a consensus. This body has made the consensus that we would rather continue to support the Attorney General, pick his side in these ongoing court battles. Because that's what we're doing. We're picking the AG's side again. Hiding with some voodoo words, saying we don't get involved and that's why we're not doing anything. When just this last budget season, we were getting involved, changing the laws in the middle of a court case. And so now when it's inconvenient, now suddenly we don't get involved. 10-2. My people of Guam, the consensus is clear. When we had an opportunity to act, 10 members of this body chose to do nothing. To say we would rather send that money back to the federal government to reimburse the U.S. taxpayer rather than use that money in our community because, by golly gee williger, we don't like the governor. So thumb in our own eye, spite our own face, because we want to side with the Attorney General in this partisan games. It's called a nonpartisan office, but the reality is it is a Republican majority backing a Republican AG, and their partisan divide has clouded their judgment so much that we would put at risk $100 million. If we had a Republican governor, you know what I would be saying? I'd be saying, let's get this stuff done as quick as possible and remove all the roadblocks so we can get it done. But there's no energy for that here. All the energy that you are going to see come out of this chamber is for how to shift blame to somebody other than themselves, other than putting responsibility on this chamber when it had an opportunity to act. We don't always have the opportunity to weigh in and resolve things and be the arbiter that keeps moving it forward. But in this unique situation, we did. And what did we do with that? Nothing. Nothing. Misspent priorities. Tax cuts for the very wealthy. No problem. We could push those through real quick. The biggest of the big business say, hey, change it up so we can have fancy paper bags. Yeah, we can make those changes happen. Yo, let's change the law so we can get sunscreen for everybody. Yeah. Let's have all 15 senators show up for that public hearing. But when it comes to $104 million in real infrastructure, suddenly our hands are tied. Suddenly, we don't have it in us to make a yes vote. And we have the gall to say we need consensus. The consensus of this body is clear. They choose to do nothing. Never have before have I seen a body so willing to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. We have $104 million in ARP money. And we are going to just piss it all away. We have until December 2026 to resolve this issue. But the moment that money gets lost isn't in some faraway date. It's happening today, right now, by a legislature paralyzed with misplaced priorities and partisan paralysis. So I'm disappointed in what our chamber has done today. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Brief extension of remarks. Any other senator willing to brief extension of remarks? No other senator? Senator from Ipan, sir.
Sidus Masia, Mr. Speaker, and buenas noches, Mariquita, to the people of Guam. Thank you for watching this session on our YouTube channel and Docomo and GTA as well. I just wanted to rise and share with the people of Guam that I don't believe we did nothing here today. I think for anybody who's been paying attention to this issue, anybody who was placing bets, I think it was clear that this bill, the odds of this bill passing weren't good at all. And I just want to use my minutes I have here to reiterate my call to the governor, the lieutenant governor, the executive branch as a whole to work together with the legislature to move the people's health care forward. As I've said, you know, there's little to no consensus, little to no transparency with this new hospital project in Manilao. And I think that where we're at are the fruits is the wrong word, but that's why we're in this situation. Because you chose to move forward without the cooperation and consensus of the legislature. And you chose to move forward on issues that absolutely should involve the people's voices here in the Guam Congress Hall. And we've been like a broken record for the last few years in calling for that cooperation and that consensus and the sit down that really never happened. But they come here to the people's house with a bill and they ask us senators to close our eyes and make a law to break the law. And that's something I haven't been comfortable doing here in this chamber. And it's not unique. It happens all the time with these special interests, special projects that have a friend in the legislature or lobby for a certain cause. And I don't really see this as being any different because, again, we're being asked to intervene. And I can say that because I didn't support the midnight effort that my colleague from MTM was talking about, but we're being asked to intervene in this court case. Court cases, right? There are multiple cases, and by deciding on this bill, I think we jeopardize and infringe upon the court's ability to decide many of these issues that are before them. And that's why I really wasn't comfortable moving forward with the bill, but I had an open mind. I wanted to ask questions, to hear the discussion and the debate from the panel. But unfortunately, the people that we most needed to hear from didn't show up, couldn't show up, wouldn't show up. Whatever it was, Taiguinai. And for me, those are the people that we needed to ask the questions to get to the bottom of this, because I hate to say this, but I'm a little more confused than I was this morning. And that's after 3 hours of questioning that we gave the panel. I'm no more clear right now than I was this morning on our ability to move this money. around. I know that the governor says we can't do it. Your line of questioning, Mr. Speaker, I'm not even sure about that anymore, you know? So again, I just want to reiterate my call to work together, and whether or not that includes really discussing location in like a meaningful way where we debate and we discuss the merits of different locations. This could be a good opportunity to go back to the drawing board and to make sure that we all have something to draw with, you know, and instead of getting having to reverse engineer and plunt ourselves in the middle of these arguments that are going on with the Attorney General and the governor. And so I'm not sure what else to say. I don't know if we're going to get another special session call tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, but again, I just couldn't support the bill without more information. And I also wasn't comfortable voting no on the bill because I didn't have the information, and that's why I passed 3 times, Mr. Speaker. So again, Sidus Masi to you and to the people of Guam. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. On brief extension of remarks, any other senator wishing to give any remarks? No other senator? Majority Leader Senator Rohan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move to adjourn this 5th special session.
On the motion to adjourn this 5th special session, any objection? No objection. So ordered. We are adjourned.